All right, we're going to start off with finding the zeros. Finding the zeros means what makes your equation equal 0. Those are your x-intercepts. And state the multiplicity. Find the zeros and state the multiplicity. Now this is a word you've seen as well. Do you remember at least hearing it before, multiplicity? Maybe you don't remember what it is, but you remember hearing it. All right. Number 1, f of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 16. F of x equals x squared minus 8x plus 16. All right, let's go ahead and find the zeros. That means I'm going to take this function and set it equal to what? 0. And we solve using our methods. What method are we going to use here? What are we going to do here to the right side? Double bubble factor. I'll let you guys finish that. Okay, what does it factor to? Minus 4, and this one is a minus 4, minus 4, minus 4. All right, find the zeros. What are the, there's only one, or there's two, but do I have to write x equals 4 twice? No, so what is my only zero? 4, and the multiplicity of it, 4, is what? 2. Okay. So what does multiplicity mean? The number of times the zeros occur. Do you see that? 4 occurred twice, so the multiplicity is 2. You only label multiplicity that's 2 or larger. So if a 0 occurs once, the multiplicity is 1. You don't have to write that one. It's implied. So you only label it when it is 2 or larger, 2 or higher. All right. Do you guys remember from last year what happens when the multiplicity is even? Something happened to your graph. It was a bounce. You remember that? It bounced. And if your multiplicity was odd, it crossed. All right, so yes, you guys do remember. All right, number 2. F of x equals 1/5 x cubed plus 3/5 x squared minus x. All right. Set it equal to 0. Again, because we're looking for the zeros. And who remembers what we can do first to, and there's one fraction I did forget here at the end. On that x, that should be a 28 over 5. All right, so after we make that correction, who remembers how we can clear fractional equations? Multiply it all by what? 5. Good. Multiply everything by 5. Now everything means both sides of the equation, yes? But it's nice because 0 times 5 is 0. And here all of the 5s will cross out once you distribute, yes? All right, so this is x cubed plus what? 3x squared minus 28x. All right, we need to solve this. What's the first step in factoring? Factor out an x, GCF. All right, I'm going to have you guys finish that off. GCF, and then see if you can do your double bubble and find your zeros. Do that now. Okay, does it factor further? Can you guys tell me what you have? Good. Plus 7 minus 4. All right, how many zeros do we have here? 3. Do you guys remember learning last year if your degree is 3, the max amount of zeros you'll have is 3? Do you guys remember learning that last year? Maybe not. All right, what are my zeros? X equals 0 and 4. And they all have a multiplicity of what? 1. So if they have a multiplicity of 1, do I have to state it? No, it's implied. Any questions on number 2? Okay, number 3. Y equals 4x to the third minus 16x squared plus 4x. I'm going to have you try that one on your own. All right. What's the first step on this one? After we said equal to 0, change that to 0. All right, what's the next step? What is that? Factor out an x. Can we take out a 4x? Is that what you're saying? Good job. All right. And that leaves me with x squared minus 4x plus 1. All right. Did anybody try to factor the outside? Or the inside? Sorry. Anybody try to factor this inside piece? Did it factor? No? All right. There's further steps to go, and this will happen on homework, on the quiz, on the test. When something does not factor, that doesn't mean you stop. First off, we do have 1 0 out here. What is it? 0. 4x equals 0, x is 0. All right, anyone know your choices in here, what you can do if it does not factor? Other methods you've learned back in Math 2 and Math 3? Choices. I could think of at least 2 that you've learned. What is it? Starts with the Q. Quadratic formula. Oh, that is one. The other one starts with the C. Complete the square. Your choice, complete the square or quadratic formula. I'm going to show you both ways really quick, and then we're going to decide, and you can decide which method. I will tell you, we'll eventually need to know both of them. All right, I'm going to write it down. X squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0 is where we're at, right? Because the outside, the 4x equals 0 already. All right, quadratic formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, I hear some of you singing it, b squared minus 4ac. Good job. All right, so A, B, C. So opposite of B would be what? This is A is 1, B is negative 4, C is 1. So opposite of negative 4 is going to be what? 4 plus or minus the square root of, and I'm going to have you finish plugging it in. How long is this for? It's okay. Yes. Yeah, hold on. Center to the nurse? Yes. Okay. Uh-huh. Bye-bye. All right. Finish it off. Keep working. Okay, what goes here for the b squared? 4 squared minus 4ac. What is a? And what is c? All over 2 times a, which is 1. 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus what? 4 all over 2. Can I reduce the 4 and the 2? Not yet, because I have this piece here that I have to simplify first. All right, 4 plus or minus the square root of 12 over 2. 4 plus or minus blank over 2. 12, do you guys remember how to break that down and take out your pairs? 4, 3, 2, 2, 2 root 3. All right, now can I reduce the 2? Only if I can reduce with those 2 there, which I can. 2 goes in to itself once. 2 goes into 4 how many times? 2, and into this one once. So what's the final answer? Good job. 2 plus or minus the square root of 3. Really quick side note, if it ended up like this, 4 plus or minus, let's say 5 root 3 over 2, this is just a little what if. This is not the problem. What if we ended up with this? Could I reduce the 4 and the 2? No, because it does not reduce with 5. What if there was no coefficient there and it was just a 1 root 3? Can I reduce the 4 and the 2? No. Still no. It has to be with the all 3 in order for you to reduce. Make sense? All right. Questions on that method? All right. X squared, what was it again? X squared minus 4x plus 1. All right, complete the square. You move your 1 over to the other side. Minus 1 equals x squared minus 4x plus blank. Do you guys remember how to fill in the blank? You take this number, you cut it in half and square it. So you take the negative 4, cut it in half and square it. What's negative 4 cut in half? What's negative 2 squared? What? 4, and what I add to one side I must add to the other. And then negative 1 plus 4 is what? 3 equals, and then you go ahead and factor that. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, what does it factor to? All right, and the whole reason we do this is so we can write this side as quantity squared. And what is it? X minus 2 quantity squared. That's the whole reason we do complete the square, so we can write it as a quantity squared. Yes?
How did you go back to
the red 4s? Yeah. When you complete the square, you always take your bx, your coefficient of x, whatever it is, and cut it in half and square it. That's the rule for complete the square. And the reason is because when we factor here, we want these two numbers to multiply to positive 4 and add up to negative 4. So if that had been say 12, 12 cut in half is 6, 6 squared is 36. Bless you. Yes? You would subtract. Okay, her question was, since I added 4 here, shouldn't I be subtracting 4 here? If I'm adding 4 here, I would subtract 4 if I was keeping it on the same side to balance it. But since I'm doing it to the other side of the equal sign, plus and plus, minus and minus, because it's equal. Does that make sense? So what I do to one side, I have to do the exact same thing to the other side. I would only do a minus if I was doing it on the same side, which I'm not. All right? Who was your math teacher last year? Okay. Who said her first name? All right. Okay, how do we solve this? What do we do to both sides? I'm trying to solve for x. I'm trying to solve for x. So what do I do to both sides? Square root. And I'm going to put a plus or minus here because when I square root, it's always plus or minus. Square root and squared cross out. x minus 2 equals plus or minus root 3, and what is the last step to get x by itself? Add the 2. And what does that give me? X equals positive 2 plus or minus root 3. Same answer? Anyone have a preference? First method, second method? Second? You should know both. I'm telling you that right now. Don't feel like, oh, I hate this method. I'm always going to use a quadratic formula. You will need to know how to complete the square eventually. So suck it up and learn it if you don't like it. Same thing with this one over here. You will need to know how to use the quadratic formula. So become comfortable with both. Yes? In this case, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. There will, when we get to the ones where you have to, I'll explain more then. Or on my desk. Thank you. Yes. No. In the middle one. All right. So I'm just going to do it really quick here since I don't have the work in my notebook. 4x equals 0. That means x equals 0. 0 equals x squared minus 4x plus 1. Since I did the steps slowly, I'm going to go quicker now. What do we do with this one? To the other side, negative 1 equals x squared minus 4x plus blank to keep it balanced. What goes in the blank? Is it always going to be 4? No, you take this number, cut it in half, and square it. Negative 1 plus 4 is 3. X minus 2 quantity squared. One more time, the whole reason we complete the square, call it complete the square, so we can write it as a quantity squared. That's the whole process, is so that we can write it like this. Why? Because there's a variety of reasons. In this case, it's because I want to solve it and do this. X minus 2 equals plus or minus 3, root 3, and then add your 2 to the other side. X equals positive 2 plus or minus root 3. All right, let's write all our zeros down. What was the first one that we got at the very beginning? 0, comma, 2 plus or minus root 3. Go back to the beginning of the problem. What's the degree here? 3 or 6? 3, right? We don't add the exponents here. The degree is 3. What did I say earlier? If the degree, whatever your degree is, that's the max amount of roots you can have. Do I have 3 roots? 1. And is there 2 here in disguise? Yes? Do you see that? All right. You will have 3 roots always, whatever your degree is. Some of them might be repeaters, double roots. Some of them might be imaginary numbers. But there will always be the value of your degree. All right. Questions on what we've done so far? We're good? Okay. Last one like this, and then we're going to move on to a different type of problem. Number 4. 3x to the 4th plus 21x squared plus 36 equals y, or y equals. Y equals 3x to the 4th plus 21x squared plus 36. Is that equal to 0? Is there a factoring, a GCF you can pull out? 3. A 3. We can't pull out an x, but we can pull out a 3. So make sure you do take that out when you're factoring, and then attempt your double bubble. All right, anybody have it factored? Is it x and x or x squared, x squared? All right. It's positive, so same signs. Minus, minus, or plus, plus? And plus what and plus what? 3 and 4? 4 and 3? All right. Can I factor x squared plus 4 further? It looks like I can, but why not? Difference of two squares. It's not a minus sign. It's not sum of two squares. It's difference of two squares. So I cannot factor this one, nor can I factor this one. So I'm going to use the zero product property and set them equal to 0. I do have a question for you. 3 by itself. Can 3 by itself equal 0? No. So this is not part of your solution. Just want to point that out because I often have kids say, oh, 3 is one of my solutions, or 0. Why over here when I asked you guys, you said, yeah, 0 is a solution. What's the difference? This has an x. It has a variable with it. So if it's 4x or 5x or 10x or even 10x squared, will 0 be one of your solutions? Now, if you take out just a constant and no variable, is it part of your solution? No. All right. X squared plus 4 equals 0. X squared plus 3 equals 0 using our zero product property. Can I solve this? What do I get? X squared equals negative 4. X squared equals negative 3. We're only using real solutions here, not imaginary for now. Can I take the square root of both sides and get a real number? No. Doesn't work. It's not possible. So what does that mean about our zeros? Find the zeros. What does that mean? No zeros. All right, really quick on our degree. What was the degree to start with? 4, which means 4 solutions. Did we end up with any zeros? No, but if we're looking at imaginary solutions, how many would have I ended up with here when I square root both sides? 2 here, plus or minus 2i. And how many would I have ended up here? 2. Would there have been 4 imaginary solutions? And again, because the degree is 4. What does this mean about the graph? Anybody know? First off, is it high, high, low, 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 high? What is it? It is a high, high. Does everybody agree? But because of the zeros, it's not a smooth. Remember when I talked about like x to the 4th, x to the 6th, x to the 8th is a smooth parabola? Do you guys remember when we talked about that? But once you throw these extra pieces in here, you end up with bumps. But because there are no zeros, it does something like this. Like there's some bumpy action going on somewhere in between. There may be even more, like it could be like this. Like we don't know, but we do know that there are no what? Zeros. And I even know that this right here is a 36. Can anybody tell me how I know that? How do I know the y-intercept's 36? How do we find y-intercepts? Set 0 in for x. Thank you. 0, 0 plus 36. What's the y-intercept? 36. Make sense? All right. Questions on any of this section before we move on? None? All right. This is a long lesson. We are partway done. Given the zeros, this next piece is pretty easy. Given the zeros, comma, write an equation. Given the zeros, write an equation. There's only one in this section that's a little difficult, but I will walk you through it. Number 5. 5 comma negative 1 comma 2/3. Okay, how many zeros did I give you? 3. And I gave you no multiplicity, which means they all have a multiplicity of 1. All right, y equals, parentheses. Going backwards, if 5 is a 0, what would have been in parentheses when I used my zero product property? X minus 5. Good job. And then for the minus 1 to have been an answer, I would have what in parentheses? X plus 1. And then for the 2/3 to have been a solution, any suggestions? Okay, I heard 2 answers. I heard x minus 2/3. And was it Leonard? Did you give me the other one? Can you say it one more time? Good job. Either one of these is correct. I will tell you, when there is a test question and you can write it either way, I like this way here, and it works out nicer when you're finding A's later, which we will find. But this, if you forget this way, the first one is okay. Any questions on how he got 3x minus 2? Do you guys agree if you set this equal to 0, added the 2, divided the 3, you'd get 2/3? All right. Questions on number 5. All right. 6, 0, comma, negative 2, parentheses, multiplicity of 2. Multiplicity of 2. And it's next to the negative 2. What does that mean? The negative 2 occurs how many times? Twice. So y equals, or f of x equals, however you want to work it out. I'm going to write it out. If 0 is a solution, do you agree it would be x minus 0? Now, would you ever see it written that way? No, it was just going to be what? X. Could you even put a 2x if you wanted? Yeah, we're not going to do that yet. We'll get to that, the coefficient, another day. All right, parentheses. I will fix that later. X minus 2 or x plus 2? Now, because the multiplicity is 2, what does that mean? Squared. Good job. That means the x plus 2 occurred twice, which is how we got negative 2 twice. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, so y equals x, parentheses, x plus 2 squared. 0 is a solution, negative 2 is a solution with the multiplicity of 2. Questions on that one? Okay, this next one, I'm going to put a star by it, test. Now, these are all on the test. Every one that I've done with you was on the test. Why am I pointing this one out? Because it's a harder one that kids typically struggle with. All right, and you're going to think right now when you do it, oh, it's not that bad, and it's really not. But kids forget to come back and study it. All right, how many zeros do I have? 2. What does that mean about my degree later? What should my degree come out to be? 2. Let's look here. How many solutions did I give you here? And was the degree 3 here? Do you see that? All right. Okay. Do not do it the way we did up here. Do not. Do you see that these are different types? These are radicals, and we don't want to treat it the same way as we did up here. Got it? All right, so here is what you do. We are going to work our way backwards. I'm going to do this. X equals 2 plus or minus root 3. Do you agree that 2 plus or minus root 3 is this here? Yes or no? Yeah. All right. And if I was, like we did over here, actually we think we have this one. Here it is, right here. When we did it over here, do you agree after we did all this work, in the end we got x equals 2 plus or minus root 3? Yes or no? Okay, so think of these steps that we did right here and work our way backwards. What would be the next step? Look at this one right here. What are we going to do? Move the 2 over to the other side. So it's pretty much the work we just did on the complete the square section, but working backwards. All right, so let's put a little note here. We're going to subtract the 2. So that gives me x minus 2 equals plus or minus root 3. All right, what do I do to both sides? What is it? Squared. Again, we're working backwards. We're going to square. What happens when I square a plus or a minus? It's always positive, right? And what happens when I square a radical? It crosses out, and I'm left with just 3. Now, does this mean x squared minus 2 squared, or do I have to FOIL? FOIL. I'm going to have you guys FOIL now. X minus 2, x minus 2. Go ahead and FOIL. All right, what do you get when you FOIL? X squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 3. I'm trying to get it to equal 0 because I'm asking you pretty much When we set the equation equal to 0, these are the solutions. So what was it? What do we do? Subtract the 3. And that gives me what? X squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. Now, the mistake kids make is they get this far and they're like, oh, I have to solve this. And then they do complete the square. Now, what happens when you complete the square? You're going back to where you started. Do you agree? You're just undoing all the work you've done. And I'm not kidding you when I say people do that, because they get here and it's instinctive. You're like, oh, equal to 0, I got to solve it. You're done here. This is y equals x squared minus 4x plus 1. Which means if I were to set this equal to 0 and undo all the work I just did, would I end up with 2 plus or minus radical 3? Yes. Now let's take a look. Is this the complete the square work that we did earlier? And was that the answer we got? So we can see that given this, working backwards, we end up where we started. Does that make sense? All right. Questions on this section before we move on to the last piece? I know. Ah, yes. The next one's not as bad. Oh my, good grief. Okay. Are you ready? All of this was to be able to sketch, which is where we're going to be now. We're going to sketch using cross and bounce. And cross and bounce is review for you guys, right? Because I asked you that earlier and you said yes, you've seen it. Okay. We are going to first, what I'm going to want you to do is describe the end behavior. These are the steps. Now, even in the homework, if it does not ask you to do that, that's what I want you doing on the problems that you have to sketch. Describe end behavior, that's the high, low, low, high stuff. Find the zeros, which we just practiced with today. Make sure you look at the multiplicity. Why do we look at the multiplicity? Because that tells us when we're going to do what? Bounce or cross. So who can remind me what's what? When do you cross? When do you bounce? You cross when it's what? Odd. And you bounce when it is even. When your multiplicity is even, you're going to bounce. When your multiplicity is odd, you're going to cross. Got it? Is that a yes? All right. And the last piece, your y-intercept. And I talked to you earlier about how to find your y-intercept. You make x equal to what? 0. So if you want to put a little note here, you make x equal to 0 to find your y-intercept. All right. Number 1. F of x equals x cubed minus 16x. Okay, definite problem that you've seen before last year and that you will see again on this upcoming quiz and test. Okay, what do we do here? First thing was describe in behavior. What's the degree? Even or odd? Degree is odd because it is 3, yes or no? All right, is it positive or negative? Positive. What does that mean about your end behavior? Low, high? Okay, so that's check. Find your zeros. Set equal to 0. I'm going to have you guys do this next piece. Go ahead and do your GCF and then continue. All right, what does it continue to factor to? Louder? x minus 4 and x plus 4. What are my 3 zeros? 0. And all of them have a multiplicity of 1. Do you agree? So they're all crosses, bounces, or different ones? Cross. They're all a cross, cross, and a cross. And they're all crosses because they're all have a multiplicity of 1. All right. Y-intercept, I'm going to do the y-intercept over here. To find the y-intercept, we plug 0 in for what? 0 in for the x's. What does y equal? Y equals 0. I will give you one little hint really quick. If your x-intercept, sorry, that should be an x. If your x-intercept is ever 0, your y-intercept is going to be 0. Keep that in mind. And I often have kids taking the test and they get an x-intercept of 0 and they do a mistake, they make a mistake and the y-intercept's like 5, and then they have a funky looking graph, or they ask me like, I'm not sure why my graph's coming out like this. If your x-intercept's 0, what's your y-intercept going to be? 0. All right. Questions before we make our graph? All right, 1, 2, 3, negative 4. One, 2, 3, positive 4, and a 0, and the y-intercept is 0, so I don't have to plot another point. All right, questions so far? I have my 3 y-intercepts plotted, x-intercepts, sorry. Negative 4, 0, positive 4. And what do we know? We're going to start low and end high, and these are all, what did we say, crosses? All right, so I'm starting on the left side on the bottom. I come up to the negative 4 and I cross. I don't know how far up I go, but I know I have to come back down to get to that 0. And when I get to the 0, is it a cross or a bounce? Cross. I don't know how far down I go, but I know I have to come back up to hit the 4. And after the 4, is there anything pulling me back down? Any more intercepts? So then from here I go up forever. Did I start low and end high? All right. Questions? Any of it coming back? All right. Number 2. Y equals x squared parentheses x minus 3 parentheses x minus 5. And I'm going to have you guys try this one on your own quickly. Did you guys do synthetic division last year? Does that sound familiar? You have to see it? Okay, I'll show it to you in a little bit. All right, what are the zeros? I heard somebody whisper a 0. Does everybody agree? And what do we know about the 0? The multiplicity is 2, yes or no? All right, what does that mean? It is a cross or a bounce? Bounce. All right, what are my other 2 zeros? 3 and 5, both crosses, yes or no? Oh, I forgot to look at the high-low stuff. Let's do that really quick. Now, how is this, as far as degree, finding the degree, how is number 2 different from number 1? It's in factored form, which means I do what with the exponents? Add them. Do not add them on number 1, but we do here. So what is the degree? 4 and positive or negative? What does that mean about your end behavior? High, high? Do we agree? like an upward facing parabola with some bumps in between. All right, y-intercept. Y equals 0, and then 0 minus 3, and 0 minus 5. What do I end up with? Should we have known that if the x-intercept is 0? Yes. All right, let's go ahead and graph. Okay. All right, start high, end high. So I'm coming up from the top, and when I hit the 0, do I cross or bounce? Bounce. And all these other ones here are crosses. Do you agree? So I come up, I don't know how high, but I know I have to come back down. And when I go down, do I go down forever, or is there something calling me back up? I have to come back up for this other intercept, and there's a cross. Is there anything bringing me down, or is that it? That's it. So I ended up on the high side. Is that correct to end high? All right. Questions? None? All right. I'm going to give you one last one to try on your own where the y-intercept is not 0. Okay? So I'll get that one to you after you get this one. All right. Number 3. Y equals negative 3 x plus 1 quantity squared x plus 4 parentheses and then x minus 2 to the 3rd power. All right, go for it. End behavior, intercepts, or your zeros, and y-intercept and multiplicity. The 0 should be easy because it's already factored for you. I do have a quick question for you before you get too far. Does a negative 3, is that negative 3 part of my zeros? No, because it has no 1 in front of with it. No x. No x, the negative 3 you can just disregard. No, because there's no x. So her question was, do you count it when you're looking for the degree? No, because there's no x. So that negative 3 really has no part of the problem other than the negative. That negative does have a part of it. That does impact your end behavior. Is this one where you have to add up for the degree? Because it's in factored form? What is the degree? 6, positive or negative? Which means what about the end behavior? I heard somebody say it. Low what? Low, low. Okay, keep working. Good question. Her question is, let me show you one from yesterday. When we were looking at this, like here, we're talking about this, right? 4th power, we look at that coefficient, yes? And that's because it's in expanded form. Same thing here. It's an expanded form, so we look at the coefficient of the largest exponent. The one we just looked at is not expanded form. It is what? Factored form. So I'm going to cover this. If you were to work this all out, which would be really ugly, you would FOIL this, you would write this out 3 times, and then distribute everything. And at the very, very end, what would you distribute to the whole thing? A negative 3. And would that negative 3 change your leading coefficient to a negative? Yes, it would. It's kind of like when I gave you this one yesterday and I asked if that 2/5 was negative, would it change things? Yes. All right. So does everyone see why it's low, low? Keep working on your own. Anybody have the y-intercept calculated yet? What is it? 96 is correct. Anyone else get 96? No? Yes? 108. Okay, let's go through it. Negative 3. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 squared is 1. Times 4. 0 minus 2 is negative what? Negative 2. Oh, to the third is negative 8. So you have negative 3 times 1 times 4 times negative 8. Multiply it out. Does it come out to be 96? Yes? All right. Now, you do not have to put 96 tick marks here, obviously. Just come up high enough, label it 96. That's your y-intercept. Now, it does make, it is important whether it's positive or negative. So if you made a mistake over here and got negative 96, that is going to mess you up in your graph, and I'll show you where. All right, we said low, low, and negative 1 is a bounce. Why is negative 1 a bounce? Multiplicity is even. 4 is a cross because multiplicity is 1. What about the 2? Because the multiplicity is odd. Are we good? All right, so we start low and we cross at the negative 4. We don't know how high up we go, but we know we have to come back down to the negative 1. And at the negative 1, what do? Bounce. This one we do know how high up we go. We have to hit the 96, come back down to the 2, and what do we do with the 2? Cross or bounce? Cross. Or is there any other intercepts bringing me back up, or was that it? So low, low. Did we end up the way we should? Yes? No? Okay,